The environmental damage from herbicide use firsthand. She has traveled to Vietnam 3 times, and she knows the damage from Monsanto personally. Welcome, Heather.
Hey, everybody. How about we don't want Monsanto around, huh? No. We really don't want Monsanto, right? That's right. So today I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the legacy and what has happened with the unadulterated use of chemicals in environment. And as I stand here right now, only 13 miles from Kent State University, where the death of 4 students and the injury of 9 others on May 4th, 1970, by the Ohio National Guard rocketed Ohio to front and center attention during the Vietnam War. It took over 40 years later. Today, over 40 years later, we look back and we think of the civil unrest and the assassination of Martin Luther King. We think of the anti-war movement, peace activists, hippies, the draft, and above all else, young men dying in a country so far away from their families they loved, fighting what historians now call, unfortunately, an unpopular war. In stark contrast now to the support the troops message we embrace today as a society. Why today at a rally am I talking, from genetically modified food, am I talking about what unfortunately people consider ancient history? I'm talking about the Vietnam War because there's a lesson that we have not learned, and we must never, ever repeat it. I would suggest the lesson of the Vietnam War we need to examine is the unfettered use of deadly agricultural chemicals and the terrifying damage it causes to people and the environment. If we continue to trust agrochemical companies like Monsanto, Dow, and the like, we are destined to repeat the nightmare that my family personally has endured. I am a GMO. I was genetically modified by Monsanto through my father. Do you understand that? I am a GMO. I am the result of what will happen. My family's story is a result of what will happen if we allow this to continue, if we do not stand up. And I will tell you, it has been a very painful, painful history. My mother suffered 2 miscarriages in 1972, and I was born, or she had 2 miscarriages, and I was born in 1972. I weighed 3 pounds, 4 ounces. I was missing my right leg below the knee, several of my fingers, and my big toe on my left foot. My remaining toes were webbed. My parents had no idea what had happened. They each blamed themselves. They thought they had done something wrong. The hospital staff thought they had done something wrong. They questioned my mother. What did you do to this child? By the late 70s, my mom had another miscarriage and then successfully gave birth to my brother. They began to hear about Agent Orange by 1980. They believed that my birth defects were caused by a chemical my father was exposed to during his service in Vietnam. Let me tell you a little bit about my dad. He served 1968 to 1969, and when he came home, he became a steelworker. And at age 38, he thought he had a chest cold. He went to the infirmary, and they immediately rushed him to the hospital, where he was told he had 5 hours to live unless he had 5 bypasses on his heart. At age 40, he developed diabetes. At age 48, he had a stroke, and at age 50, he died of a massive heart attack. He applied for Agent Orange benefits in 1986, and my mom's claim is still in appeal. GMOs, if this happens, you will all be in appeal. Your children will be in appeal. No one will listen. 40 years later. Agent Orange was named as the name of a herbicide that was developed for the military by Monsanto and several other chemical companies, primarily used in tropical climates. Our veterans were not warned of that this chemical was dangerous. As a matter of fact, they were told it was perfectly safe. Many men, if you look back at pictures, you'll see them without their shirts on. They'll be spraying, all of these things, no protection. Agent Orange was a chemical mix of 50-50 of 2 chemicals known conventionally as 2,4-D and 2,4,5-T. The combined product was mixed with kerosene or diesel fuel, and it was dispersed by aircraft, vehicle, and hand spraying. It's an estimated 19 million gallons of this chemical was sprayed on South Vietnam during the war. The earliest concerns about Agent Orange were the product's contamination with TCDD, dioxin. TCDD has caused a wide variety of diseases, and most of them are fatal. The Agent Orange used in Vietnam was later found to be extremely contaminated. When this chemical was also being used in the United States, and it was mandated to be used 1 gallon per acre. In Vietnam, they found that it didn't work well enough to kill the jungle so that the enemy couldn't hide, or to kill the food crops so the enemies couldn't have food. So they found out that it was better at 3 gallons per acre. This is my warning. This is what is going to happen with genetically modified crops. The more they become resistant, the more chemicals that will be dumped. And the more chemicals that will be dumped, the more ill people will become. Thank you. Agent Orange was discontinued in Vietnam in 1971, even though Monsanto and other chemical companies had many internal memos saying that they knew it was unsafe. The DOD either didn't listen, or Monsanto, because the money train was coming in, because as fast as they could make it, the government bought it. The government had an open contract. As soon as you got it, we bought every drop. Agent Orange wasn't only used in Vietnam, it was sprayed in the US, Canada, and around military bases, in forestry and railroad beds. There's many areas in the United States contaminated with dioxin. The government has not been forward with where Agent Orange was disposed of and stored in the US. I often consider of the military bases around here, there's one in Ravenna. I have no idea. I know that there's lots of illnesses and things and cancers, so those are just something to keep in mind. The DOD ignored pleas for the veterans and their families to investigate why they were so sick, why their wives were having miscarriages. They didn't admit Agent Orange could have an impact on Vietnam veterans until 1991. They are still denying the birth defects and illnesses in children and grandchildren of Vietnam veterans. I'm the co-founder of an organization called Children of Vietnam Veterans Health Alliance. We have around 700 members of all children of Vietnam veterans. Many suffer from rare illnesses, birth defects, cancers, and lots of autoimmune diseases, and lots of allergy sensitivity to a variety of environmental factors. Our age group is about 25 to 40 years old. We should not be having these illnesses. A very limited number of us have been able to get genetic counseling and have found there is a mutation in our genes. One friend of mine from California was born with severe hip dysplasia. She's had numerous hip replacements, and at 33 she was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. So rare that the oncologist lab came to her bedside and asked her, "Where did you get this cancer? What were you exposed to?" The oncologist lab questioned her, and when they told her that the only time they see this cancer is in a farm worker that has worked in a pesticide-laden field for 40 years, did her interest say, "Oh my God, my dad was a Vietnam vet and he was exposed," and he has since passed away. She never worked in farming, and this mutation that they discovered was on her patch gene. We believe epigenetic research is where you will find answers, but we're not millionaires and we're not scientists. Most of our fathers have already died due to confirmed Agent Orange illnesses, and we're in the middle, or they're in the middle of terminal illnesses. We have no other family history that will cause these problems. Our group's children also suffer. My children, luckily so far, that my one son has asthma, but grandchildren of Vietnam veterans are being born with high numbers of autism spectrum disorders, spina bifida, clubfoot, and other rare illnesses. I would argue we would find a large connection for autism spectrum disorders in this country in general if we would take a serious look into generational exposures to herbicides and agricultural products. All the while, our government refuses to carry out research that could ultimately save our lives. They turn a blind eye to our dads dying and our siblings that are sick, and now our own children. Please, all of you, pay attention and get the word out. Fight and push so this never has to happen to your family. Introducing crops that require more chemicals to be used is a recipe for disaster. I have been down this road. All of the Vietnam vets have been down this road. The children and grandchildren are down this road as well. Do not let this country repeat history. I am a GMO because of my father's exposure. Monsanto calls themselves an agricultural company. I call them serial killers. Say no to GMO. Thank you.